Today, my special guest is AC Evans. AC is the co-founder and CEO of Drips.com, the first conversational texting company of its kind. Drips helps businesses increase lead conversions by communicating through automated, humanized conversations at scale. Some of his clients include Liberty Mutual Insurance, 3-Day Blinds, and CreditRepair.com. AC is a serial entrepreneur who overcame some tough challenges as a kid, nearly failing high school and dropping out of college. He's now passionate about scaling the unscalable in all of his business ventures. AC, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, where are you today? I like to ask that question since we're still in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yep, Akron, Ohio. This is where our headquarters is based, and I am currently working out of our corporate condo. This is where employees, peers, partners, prospects, we generally have them stay here instead of a hotel room.
Nice. I love it. Akron is a great place. All right. So let's talk first and foremost about Drips, which is DRIPS.com. How did you get started? What is it and how does it help companies?
Yeah, Drips is in the most simplistic form, sometimes we'll call it a chat bot for SMS. I don't allow us to technically call it a chat bot when it comes to marketing and sales because we do it very differently. We're human backed. Everything is natural language processing. All these conversations are one-to-one. But being scalable, which is a really tricky thing to do for large companies like the Liberty Mutuals or the 3-Day Blinds of the world that are having, thousands, if not tens of thousands of leads a day that they need to hold conversations with. The big difference between what Drips does or Chatbot does is Chatbot is very much in the how can I help you business. They're in the servicing, side of things. And it feels like a bot, right? Like that's the big reason that you call Chatbot. And that reason we don't call Drips a chatbot is when you talk to a chatbot, it's respond more if you want more information, respond price if you want the price. It's a very mechanical, very bad user experience, where with Drips, it's a very fluid, very natural conversation. So it may say something like, hey, Brandon, just reaching out. Saw we haven't got you scheduled yet to get your window fitting with 3-Day Blinds. Is there a better time we could talk? We're open until 8 o'clock tonight. Question mark. And then you could text back and be like, well, how much is it going to cost? And then it would say, well, it depends on the sizing, depends on this. And ultimately we can drive the user to whatever goal the enterprise wants. But the persisting is very difficult. Doing asynchronous conversations is very difficult, but that is what is expected of the consumer these days, is that they have the control, not the brands have the control. For the longest time, for the last couple decades, brands have been trying to steal consumers' time. You think of commercials, billboards, direct mail, email. All those things take me time to have to stop whatever it is that I'm doing to digest them. But nowadays, consumers see right through that. They have banner blindness. They're not carefully combing through their direct mail. They can't find your email because they're inundated with it. So you really have to figure out a way to cut through that noise. And we think that what we call conversational texting is a very appropriate, very effective way to do that.
Okay, let me jump in here and let's start to clarify some of these concepts for people who may not be as familiar. Chatbots. I'm glad you went ahead and got that out of the way. I was going to ask you if that's sort of a dirty word for you. It sounds like it is.
For me only.
Yeah, exactly. But I think more people are aware of these chatbots. These are the little things that typically sit down in the bottom of your browser window, typically on the right-hand side, which seems to be the norm, and they're little talk bubbles. And so you've probably seen these if you've been on a website. A lot of times they pop up automatically and said, hey, I see you're looking at the pricing page. Can we answer questions about pricing or whatever, right? So that's what we're talking about, is a chat bot. And like you're saying, AC, typically in my experience, you have to really think those through in the beginning if you're going to try to semi-automate these, right? Which I think you're doing a better job of, because in other words, if you have to anticipate, well, what would be the common challenges or questions that our customers might have? And then you have to build these trees of, if they ask this, then we answer with this. If they might ask this, answer with that. But the fact is, you can't really anticipate every single thing that somebody's going to think of, right? You guys are doing it differently. It seems that you're using AI or artificial intelligence to scale that conversation that you mentioned, 3-Day Blinds. I'm sure they have hundreds of different variations of topics on a daily basis. How are you? So talk to us about how Drips is different. And you also mentioned SMS or text messaging. So does that mean that somebody can start a conversation on the website and then continue it on their mobile phone in text?
Yeah, great questions. We are primarily telephony driven, meaning we are living on the phone. We are living with the consumer. These are consumers that have opted in, or they already have pre-existing business relationships with their the enterprises. So maybe they're an insurance consumer, and they forget to pay their bill. We can reach out, with an administrative message saying something like, "Hey, Brandon, we got an issue with your billing, please call us today, so that you don't have any disruption in your service." So yes, all SMS based, call based as well, but primarily conversational texting is our big driver. The big difference between us and chatbot is, again, chatbot has to your point, they have to boil the ocean. They have to know everything that anybody could ever say, because they are taking what is effectively a cold user. They're taking somebody that's just a visitor on a website. And look, we use chatbot. We have a server. We have the little chat bubble on drips.com, right?
Right.
It is an appropriate tool for certain things. Where we shine and what we do differently is we know who these consumers are. They've opted in to get something. They are a pre-existing business relationship, or they have implied permission somewhere. So like, we already know their disposition. We know what they're looking to do, or the enterprise knows, I should say, not Drips necessarily. But as an example, if 3-Day Blinds has somebody that cancels an appointment, they know that Brandon canceled the appointment. So like, we know exactly who Brandon is. We know exactly what just happened to him. We have contextual relevance, and we can reach out with that contextual relevance in mind with a very prescriptive cadence, a one-to-one humanized cadence. That is the attempt is to drive Brandon to whatever goal the brand wants. So we know who Brandon is already. We know where he came from. We know where we want him to get to. And that's a much different way to solve the problem than just saying like, "Hey, who are you? What can we do to help you?"
Right.
So it's a more prescriptive, it's harder, it's a lot more nuanced, meaning instead of having one big tree, as you said, we have to have many, 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 many little ones at all different points of the consumer journey. We're trying to get somebody out of bucket A and into bucket B, and then we're trying to get them out of bucket B and into bucket C. And we're trying to drive that consumer through the member journey to ultimately have a better user experience, save money for the enterprise, and increase performance for the enterprise as well.
Okay. So you mentioned that, so we mentioned artificial intelligence, natural language processing. So you guys are basically really computer nerds in the office that are really making this thing shine, right? As, for example, I can only imagine Liberty Mutual Insurance gets, God, how many texts back and forth a day? 100,000 or more?
Thousands, a lot. Yeah,
Thousands,
I'm sure it's in the
right?
thousands. Yeah, and the problem when you open up a humanized conversation like that, where you say like, "Hey, Brandon, it's brand X. When's a good time to talk?" Question mark. You're going to get human responses, right?
Yes.
Like I think I did this stat recently in June. I think we had almost 900,000 unique responses to questions just like that one. I mean, you could think of like,
whenever. Yeah.
Yeah. Call me whenever.
Yeah.
I'm at the office. I'm driving.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Middle finger emoji. Who knows? People can send back anything they want. So it's a terribly difficult thing to solve at scale. But we've just been doing it for so long. We've had so many of these conversations. We built up such a big human approved NLP database. Meaning, when I say that, I mean we know every which way to say I'm at work. Right. Mm-hmm. You can say I'm at the office. That means I'm at work. You can say I'm working. That means I'm at work. You could say I'm stuck dealing with a paper jam. That means I'm at the office. You know what I mean? So we just seen all these, and over time have built up this model so that we can handle the appropriate responses for the appropriate inbound messages.
And the computers can get smarter over time the more data they're given, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. There is no such thing that I've seen to, AI in the sense that you just turn it on and it just goes. Like, AI is worth nothing without data. I think for the foreseeable future, it's going to be very hybridized, meaning there's AI, humans, people writing script, people responding, people quality assuring, agents, if you will, have to handle a lot of this stuff. That's where we're going to be for years. Even Google, even Facebook, if you test their chatbots, it's not you can tell it's a chatbot, and
Right.
to me, that is the big difference. If you can tell it's a chatbot, then you've already lost the consumer's experience, in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
very, very and to me is when you call somewhere, it's like press one for this, press two for this, and then you get to the next layer, and it's like press seven for this. If you need this, press nine. And you get to the next layer, it's like press one for this. You're just like, oh God, just get me over it. Like to me, that is chatbot. That's like a phone chatbot.
Yeah, I was going to say it reminds me of the old phone trees, and you call in, and sometimes you still get these where it says you can tell it's a automated voice, right? And it's like, what are you calling about today? Press one or this, and you say it, and then you hear little clicks like somebody's actually clicking on a keyboard, and you're like, there's nobody there. They're just
Yeah,
putting that sound in to make me think that there's somebody there, but I'm talking to a robot. But
yeah.
but yeah,
It's
so
funny.
people kind of
I
replicated
actually
that.
know. I actually know exactly who that company is that you're talking about. I won't name them by name, but the interesting thing is they actually technically do have some people behind the scenes listening, right?
Okay.
So they have AI, right, and they have voice recognition, and they transcribe it to hopefully get down to what it is that the person's intent is. But if that AI can't, or it can't with a certain amount of confidence, a human, will listen to that and they'll say, okay, this person means this. But that takes time.
Yeah.
It's much, much, much more difficult to deal with respectfully their problem is than ours, because we know what the person's saying. It's in black and white, it's text. And the great part about a asynchronous conversation on text messaging is it can take as long as it takes. Like if we take 5 minutes to respond, if the user takes 2 days to respond, it doesn't really matter. When you're on the phone and you have to get that back and forth, back and forth, that's why they have to put in the clickety, 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 click,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they got to try to keep you engaged, right? They got to, and
Right.
then, again, this is all psychology, like even if it's not real, it still helps. It's kind of like it's kind of like a laugh track on a sitcom. Like, the laugh track is added there, but there's still part of our monkey brains or lizard brains or whatever, still hears it and still goes, okay, this is the funny part, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I also know that you guys integrate with a lot of different platforms, including Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, HubSpot, and others. On average, AC, how many integrations would you say some of your clients are, making sure that the Drips technology talks to, so it's sharing data with all these different platforms?
It's usually two or three. I mean, we almost always have to be integrated with their CRM, right? Because they need to be able to programmatically post us a user's record at a specific time and moment in time, so we know who the person is, why we're reaching out to them, what the goal is. Then there's generally some goal that we're trying to drive them to. Oftentimes, it's to get on the phone with an agent or a loan officer or a 3-day blinds consultant or whatever it is. So we also almost always are integrated somehow with their telephony stack, their call center stack, and that could be like a company like Invoca that does call tracking, analytics, call routing to make sure it goes to the right person at the right time. And then sometimes, we're hooked up to their BI team or their analytics team or, some tracking software. It's really just dependent. I mean, I've seen, over 100 of these integrations or 100 of these, client solutions that we built. And I don't know if there's ever been two that have been exactly the same.
Oh,
The
yeah.
needs are almost always completely unique. And that's why we remain a managed technology and not a DIY platform. It's all a done for you platform. It's very consultative. We just don't have a choice. It's too difficult of a problem to try to solve with a one-click integration. Enterprises don't have that ability with things that are this expansive in the company. You almost have to have a team on both sides, helping figure out how to stitch the systems together.
Sure. Now, is Drips really geared for the big enterprise, or do you also work with some smaller SMBs?
Absolutely the former. We've looked at doing DIY systems for the SMBs. It's just a different problem to solve. And there's a lot of those companies out there that are trying to do it. Some are doing a pretty good job. Generally, they're vertical specific, so they're made just for loan officers and mortgage, or they're made just for recruiters, or they're made just for real estate agents. So it's a fairly highly competitive place. I don't find the enterprise value as interesting from a 1-day exit type standpoint. The solving the big problems for the big companies is more of our sweet spot. When you're talking about a single realtor, you're talking about he or she has 3 or 4 leads a day, right? Like that's just not as difficult of a problem to solve as a company that has 100,000 leads in a day. So we definitely specialize in the scale, the big brands, the big enterprises, the Fortune 100s, Fortune 1000s. I mean, Fortune 10s. Sometimes we have some clients that are in that list. So we're looking to solve kind of big problems for big companies.
Okay.
Again, and we looked at DIY. We actually had a real estate minimum viable product built, and we shelved it just because of a bifurcation of focus. You know, we're one of the fastest growing companies in America, and we were ultimately worried that if you try to chase 2 rabbits, you lose them both.
I love that analogy. Absolutely. Because I was thinking it from my perspective when I was looking at Drips initially going, yeah, this doesn't look like something that I would use. And I've used a couple of these other chatbot type solutions on my website. And to your point about the lone realtor, I've sometimes felt this ridiculous anxiety when occasionally somebody would start chatting me and I'm on the go and I'm like, because I felt like this urgent need to get back to them, right? You mentioned asynchronous, but in the sense of when somebody has a question, they're on your website, that second, you don't want to wait too long as a salesperson. No. You want to get right back. So I ended up taking the thing off. I'm like, you know what? I would rather just have somebody go to my form, email me, so they're not an expectation that they need an immediate answer. Because
and there you go. Yeah. Email, to your point, for B2B like this specifically, is asynchronous. That's why it works, right? It's like you're busy, I'm busy. We have to be asynchronous because we're both busy, and us getting on the same page takes scheduling. And what we're finding is that, it's not just professionals that are experiencing that now, it's consumers as well. Now, they may not be busy running podcasts, they may not be busy running companies, but they are busy doing something that they'd rather be doing other than taking a brand's phone call, right? They're watching, the Game of Thrones over again. They're pausing live TV. They're shopping on Amazon. They're reading ebooks. They're outside playing with their kids, whatever it is. But like, people are busy now, and it's even during Corona. It's just a different economy than I grew up in. Like when I grew up and I was 11, 12 years old, and the phone rang in the house, that was a super, super, super exciting time for me and my sister. We would trip over each other to get to the landline phone. And you think back, it's like, what is the difference now? Like, why is it not an exciting moment to pick up a phone call? And there's a couple of things. One, the prevalence of spam, right? That's one thing. But that doesn't explain why I can't get my mom on the phone, right? I call my mom and she'll ignore me and text me back, and she'll say, "I'm busy. What's up?" So what has happened is, because of phones and apps and Netflix and everything else, like, we have other things to do. Back when me and my sister were 11 and 13, we had nothing to do. There was nothing to do. We had sticks in the backyard that we would throw at each other. Like that was the only form of entertainment we had. So a phone call or somebody knocking on the front door was a really exciting time. But nowadays, we can fill our time with anything we want. There's unlimited content and unlimited distractions on social media and Candy Crush and everything else.
Oh, sure. But you did mention one of the big dynamics that's working in our society right now is the fact that most people don't pick up phone calls, right? We all have a mobile phone, but I'm like, I would probably consider myself in the majority. If I don't know the number coming in, I don't answer it. So a lot of times it goes to voicemail or it gets blocked. But the thing about what you're doing, though, is, number one, you said most of these customers are already opted in. So that text will probably get through. And talk about the open rates. The open rates for SMS text messages are still through the roof, are they not?
Yeah, they're almost 100%. I mean, they're all the way there. And again, there's going to be the bad actors out there. There's going to be the spammers. That is absolutely not what we do. I mean, we're taking very specific people at very specific times with very, very specific companies, and we're reaching out contextually. So if to your point, if you were on a website and you abandoned the shopping cart on 3-day blinds and you'd already opted in, and some random Irvine, California number called you an hour or two later, you wouldn't pick it up. You'd be like, "What is this?" Click. And you just wouldn't think about it. You would just think like spammer, and you would hang up. Or sorry, you wouldn't even pick it up, right? But if 3-day blinds text you and they say, "Hey, Brandon, just following up, we saw you're interested. Want to see if you wanted to jump back on a call to finish scheduling your appointment." Then you go, "Oh yeah, I did get busy earlier. I had to walk away from the computer. Yeah, call me tonight." So there's an awareness problem. Companies are having to contend with this every day, and it's not just 3-day blinds. It's healthcare providers, it's insurers, it's everybody. Like
Yeah.
there's a big problem with awareness, and you can't get it with email. You can't get it with phone calls. Direct mail is super expensive and it's slow. And if you're getting a 2 to 3% response rate, you're crushing it. So like what's left? What's left for the enterprises? And we're finding that now big companies are investing in text messaging for that reason and for the right reasons.
Sure. I'm curious, and I don't know the term right off the top of my tongue right now, but I know text messaging is getting better and there's like an advanced version of it. Do you do you know what I'm talking about? Where there's like more?
Yeah, the RCS. Yep.
Yeah, RCS. Can you?
Yep.
Are you guys
Yep.
looking into that? And you think that's going to come sooner rather than later? Tell our listeners about that.
I think it's going to be later rather than sooner. I mean, there's a lot of technologies that are coming into play. There's a thing called Stir Shaken, which creates handshakes all the way through. Who owns the phone number, the carrier, the phone, the providers. The platforms like us that will do caller ID authentication all the way through. But that's, you're talking about 4 or 5 or 6 different layers of companies and platforms. And you got to get AT&T involved. You got to get Twilio involved. You got to get us. You got to get, the handsets, the providers, T-Mobile, the phones themselves have to all adapt this new framework in order to create this better user experience for more enriched caller ID, call authentication, so they can see if it's a spoofed phone number or not. So it just, the point of telling you that story is like even something like that will help block spam. It will help authenticate enterprise. It will help, give rich caller ID so users can see that it's 3-day blinds calling them. Even something that is that useful is taking years to get adopted because there's so many variables, there's so many companies, so much regulation in place. It just takes a long time. Same thing with RCS, I think, is like, does it work? Can it work? This is like if you like a person's message or you heart, the message or whatever. That's kind of what this is. But it eventually.
What does RCS stand for?
Rich chat
syndication or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's in other words, instead of just a plain text, you can do graphical text, different stuff going on in the text. Yeah, I've seen demos of that. It looks incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be great when it's real. I mean, and again, it's real, but it's, Google's leading the pack on it. A couple telephony providers are messing with it. But at the end of the day, if 0.5% of, an enterprise's consumers can get these things, are they going to invest in building it out? Are they going to pay us to make sure that they have rich chat? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a chicken and egg problem, right? You got to get the users before people are going to want to build the rich chats on top of it. But it'll be great when they do. I think it will get there. I think that will actually replace a lot of what we think of chatbot and what we think of apps. I think it's going to replace a lot of that, but it's probably a couple years away. But what that will do is, Liberty Mutual can reach out and say, "Hey, Brandon, we got an issue in billing. You could pay your bill now if you'd like, or we can jump on a call." And then there'd be a pay now button, right, in the text message, and they click that, and it's paid, and it's all done. So that's great. That's a great future to look forward to. Drips looks forward to help pioneer it once it's a little more widely adopted.
Got it. Now, I know that you are a fan, AC, of marketing psychology, and you've been doing this stuff for a long time. Can you talk about what some rules of marketing are that work and why?
Yeah, sure. Anybody listening, you should look up a book called Influence by, it's the psychology of persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini, I think. CIA.
Yeah, he's Cialdini or
Dini.
However,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Cialdini.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, he's probably the most prolific writer about it. So everything I'm going to talk about today is mostly his content. But there's a lot. I mean, this works with direct to consumer. It works if you're trying to do B2B. It works if you're trying to recruit somebody. You'll see this in commercial ads. You'll see this on radio. I mean, you see it everywhere. It is clickbait, right? The very definition of clickbait. Why does it work, right? It's because you trick somebody into wanting to know more, and there's a lot of different things. I mean, there's scarcity. That's probably one of the most simple ones that you see all the time, right? You say like, there's only 5 of these shoes left, and then it goes 4 left, and the monkey brains, our primitive brains go, oh my gosh, there's only 4 left. Like, what if I don't get these now? I may never get this shoe again in my life. And you start to think about the scarcity, and it tricks you into wanting to buy the shoe. Then you have things like social proof. So you see on the shopping, I'll use shopping cart as an example because e-com is really the best at this. You see on the shopping cart, it says like, Brandon also bought these boots, right? And I'm like, oh man, if Brandon bought them, I should buy them. Or 3 other people in Akron are looking at these boots right now, and you see this and you're just like, oh gosh, I got if everybody else is looking at them, I got to buy them. That's why eBay shows watchers on auctions, things like that. How many people favorited it, reviews, you think about reviews, that's all social proof. Then you have concession. Concession is, markdown prices, right? Like, everything 20% off. Like, you can go to any e-com store right now on the internet, and almost every one of them is going to pop up saying, join our newsletter, 20% off, right? There's what else?
Reciprocity. Yeah, I love reciprocity.
Yeah, reciprocity.
Well, it's like, sign up for my email and you'll get a free PDF download right now. I love, that's a favorite of all of us marketers online, right?
Yeah, give what you want to receive. Webinars, ebooks, referrals. They always say the best marketers give value first, right? So that's all, like you said, about reciprocity, consistency and commitment. Making sure you follow through what you're saying. Priming is one of my favorite. So you get the yes before the yes, right? So you ask, you're reaching out to me, be like, hey, see, like, how's it going? Have you enjoyed building drips or whatever? And I go, yeah, it's been great. Be like, great. Would you like to talk about that on my podcast? It's like, if I already said yes, I've already committed to some degree. I've been primed to say yes again. That's why a lot of times on surveys, you'll see things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite dog? Who would you vote for in the next year's, priming? So they get you like used to saying, they get you used to a pattern. They prime you, Then there's authority. Authority is a big one. I mean, that's being able to, like, I'm on the board of directors of the Leads Council. It's a industry, self-regulating association, and that means something to companies when I'm talking about SMS best practices and what they should be considering when it comes to compliance and all these different things. So I have some authority, based on my position on the board. And that matters in B2B. But there's just so much of this stuff, and it all matters. It all works, and we see it every day. We live it every day. Anytime you feel, I call it like a gravity, where you're like, oh, I feel like I need to buy this. There's a reason for that, and you start to like dig it apart, and it becomes obvious. And the funny thing is they say that marketers are the most susceptible, even though we know it. Like, I got some I got some new gutters in my house not too long ago, and the guy showed up, and it was just the perfect pitch. I called the owner of this company. I told him, I was like, you guys have the best pitches I have ever seen. I bought $5,000 in new gutters, which I don't know if that's expensive or cheap. But
that doesn't sound cheap, and it also sounds real sexy to buy gutters.
I'll tell you what, this guy his gutters had sex appeal, and he did things like, like reciprocity, like authority, like he primed me. He gave me concessions, he like called his boss to see if he can give me 20% off. And for that reciprocity, he put a sign in my yard, scarcity. I only can do this, once this month. I can get this discount off. He had all the competitors' gutters with him, right? Little chunks of them.
Yeah.
And they were dirty and they were banged up. And they were rusty and they were not brand new. And then he brings out his shiny new thing. So now you got this, obvious difference in product. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know these are muddy and dirty on purpose, but man, does yours look really good.
Well, I hope he made his quota early in the year, because that sounds like an awesome salesperson. Well, let me ask as we start to wrap up. I know in your bio, I saw that you overcame some challenges in childhood. Many of us have, but could you just speak to some of those things that you had to overcome and how, and how that's shaped your life as an entrepreneur now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you talked about the challenges of almost failing high school and dropping out of college. Those were actually easy. It was super easy to almost fail high school. I just didn't pay attention. Um, uh, for me, schooling, traditional schooling was tough. I did not take well to normal education or curriculum. I luckily I had a wrestling coach, Brian Davis, in it must have been ninth or tenth grade, freshman or sophomore year. He saw I was struggling with grades. I almost wasn't able to wrestle because of my grades, and he got me to look at a local vocational school, which is a very hands-on learning thing. You go there half the day. You knock off some of the, in my opinion, more superfluous, science, history, things that just weren't really speaking to me. And I got to go do programming and digital design at this company, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, this vocational school, excuse me. And there I was a straight A student. I was top of the class. I was voted MVP. I still go back there and I do speaking engagements for the different classes. I've done it a couple times. They've had field trips to our offices at Drips. So to me, that was the big overcome back then, was just, actually working with something tangible. Since then, growing up, like now I read a lot, but it's because I can control my curriculum, right? I can decide what I'm learning and what I'm working with. College was a little difficult, but that was mostly because my parents made enough that I couldn't get aid, but not enough that they could help me, right? So I was working a full-time job, trying to do night school at college. And then I just realized, like, what am I doing? Because I was already working online. I was already learning about marketing. I was already, candidly making six figures a year doing, performance marketing and I just said, like, why go to college? Like, I was a bad employee. I got fired from multiple jobs. It just wasn't really great for me. And then I started learning about entrepreneurialism. I never heard the word entrepreneur. Back then we were just called losers, people without jobs.
Yeah.
Now it's, obviously super sexy. But yeah, other hardships were, I had alcoholic parents, abusive father. And I think the thing that I learned most through a lot of that stuff was just perseverance, just overcoming difficult situations, overcoming stressful situations, and just getting through it. Really, to me, that's what entrepreneurialism is all about, is just not giving up. Like, you don't lose until you quit, And I've had 25 projects and companies before Drips. Some made money, some didn't. Some I lost a lot of money on, but I just kept going. I kept persisting, and that's really what, if you're looking to build a startup or you're looking to build a business, is all about, is just hitting a wall and then figuring your way around the wall or under the wall or over the wall or through the wall or, or whatever, and just persisting. But yeah, that's,
I think
been a
that's
handful of them.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing all that, because I think there are a lot of nuggets in there for people listening, especially some of us who have kids who are in grade school, or, we have one getting ready to go into high school who's just not interested in the traditional schooling at all. And, as a parent, you're like, oh, you got to go to school and get good grades. You're supposed to get into college. But a lot of people, you're not the only one. I'm a huge fan, for example, of Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure you know who he is. Huge
Sure.
social media influencer, and, was basically flunked out of high school, barely got through college somewhere, but none of that mattered, because similar to your journey, he found a passion. He started working really hard, and then he was at the right place at the right time, applied himself when social media came around, became an expert in that, has founded one of the top agencies worldwide doing social media marketing. And to this day says, you know what? I hated school. I had teachers that told me I was a loser, to your point. I was stupid. I was never going to amount to anything. But I think he knew in his mind that wasn't true, thankfully, and that he just needed a different venue, a different path, just like you went to the vocational and thought, hey, this is cool because I can actually make stuff and build stuff, or I can get online and start learning and doing. There's nothing stopping any kid right now who has a computer access to learning how to code web pages or even work with chatbots and all kinds of stuff, right? You can learn this stuff. And
I tell people all the time. They ask me, how do I, what should I learn? What school should I go to for programming? I'm like, you want to be a programmer, just be a programmer.
Yeah.
Just open up your laptop and start going through tutorials. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can learn. And we Drips has over 90 employees now, and I never look at people's education credentials. I look at like, what have they done? What do they know? What can they answer? What can I ask them? Like, and maybe, I'm sure there are some companies that are too big that they have to, select out, some group of people and look at college education and whatnot. But for programming, web design, graphic design, stuff like that, like it really just matters what you can do. And you can, if you find a passion for it, to your point, I love the term passion. It's one of our core values at Drips. The thing that passion allows you is an unbelievable amount of energy to deploy towards something. So if you love programming, don't go to school for programming, just start programming, or go to, I don't know if you've seen these, but they have a lot of these boot camp schools now where you pay whatever, 7 or 10 grand. And, they put you through a 10 or 12 week boot camp, programming, hands-on, working with expert programmers. And some of them guarantee you a job. There's last time I looked, there's 4 jobs to every 1 developer right now.
Wow.
Now this is pre-pandemic, so maybe that's changed. But in theory, there's a lot of tech debt and there's not a lot of developers. So yeah. Want to be a programmer, just be a programmer.
And not only that, those boot camps, like you said, they might be 7 to 12 grand, which sounds like a lot of money, but you could finance that if you needed to. And also, that's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than a 4-year college or university. And like you said, you're going to be immediately employable with a strong skill set. And so you could always start working, make some money. If you feel like going back to college later, great. Get a degree, go to community college, go to night school, whatever. But I think I love your point, and there's just nothing stopping anybody right now. So thank you for sharing all that.
It's not.
Well, I've had the pleasure of speaking with AC Evans, the co-founder and CEO of Drips.com. AC, where can we go to learn more about you and Drips?
Drips.com is the easiest place. There's a About Us page on there. It's got myself and my co-founders and our leadership team there. You can find our LinkedIn's that way. My email is ac@drips.com. Always accessible, always interested in talking to people, very active on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Drips.com is a great URL, by the way. Did you have to just kill somebody to get that, or how'd that come about?
No, it's a fun story. I got really lucky. Again, when you think about startups, like I think .coms and good names are so important. I mean, talk about the psychological marketing rules, like social proof, right? Authority. Like if I show up and talk to a big business and my domain name is text-drips.net, it's like, they're like, oh, okay. But if we come over, like, yeah, drips.com, we got a good logo,
Yeah.
And it just immediately gives some level of authority and social proof. And I challenge everybody out there to look very, very, very hard and work a long time. I mean, I had 100 different names for this company until we got to Drips, But no, I saw drips.com. It was listed on Sedo or Sedo, however you say it, sedo.com, one of the big domain auction websites. And they had it listed for like $80,000 or something like that. And
Wow.
I did the Wayback Machine, found, the person that used to run it, found his Hotmail address, messaged him directly, said, hey, look, it's me and my co-founder, Anthony. We're just two guys trying to build this marketing company. And he said, are you guys into investments? And I said, no, why? And he said, well, Drips, it's an investment acronym. It means dividend reinvestment planning systems or something like that. I can't remember the acronym now. And I said, no. I said, we're into drip marketing. And he goes, well, what's that? And so neither of us had any respect for the other's value on the domain, if you will. So long story short, that guy had, I think, 3 partners, and we talked him down, and we gave him $4,000. So each of the partners, $1,000 for the domain name.
That's a hell of a bargain from 80 grand list value.
Yeah, and then now it's been valued for twice that. Recently. I mean, we obviously would never sell it, but yeah, again, those domain names are out there. It's hard. It's hard to find a good one. It's often expensive to get a good one. I mean, I was looking at a domain for a friend just a couple of days ago, and it was like 20 grand, and the guy's just like, I can't afford that. I'm like, yeah, but like, what does it mean if you convert twice as many customers,
Sure.
the first year? Like, what's that worth? And a lot of these domainers also will work out payment plans. Like, they know they're going to get their 20 over the next 24 months. Maybe
They'll do
that's a
it.
way to do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
another good nugget to end with because a lot of people just do a cursory search and go, Drips is not available. I'm just going to move on. Or but yeah, do the math, do the math, and then try to negotiate. Well, AC, thanks so much for all your great information today and for being a guest on the Go for Launch podcast.
Thank you, Brandon.